Hello, everyone, and welcome to My Lit Podcast. It's me, your host, Donna. I know I've been gone for a minute, but I haven't been doing nothing over here, okay? In terms of writing my book, yes, absolutely 100% nothing. No progress, sadly. However, I have had the opportunity to speak with several authors so far who are actually published or about to be published later this year and gotten some amazing advice. I reached out across the community for some assistance. I felt very alone and was kind of isolating myself, especially from my own writing, because I was very stuck and still kind of am. But these amazing authors were so open and willing to speak to me about their publishing journey and their awesome books, which are available. And today, the first author who I had the privilege of speaking to is featured in this episode. Her name is Miss Ashley Hawthorne. On March 12th of this year, she just published her second book entitled Death Sentence. It's a murder mystery kind of friends are enemies to lovers ish. It sounds like it's going to be an amazing book. I'm going to go grab it right after I do this episode. And then Ashley also published her first novel last year, and it's entitled Deliver Me. She's a contemporary romance author, and she's seriously such a genuinely sweet and kind person. I can't give her enough praise for how kind she was and informative and supportive of me. I mean, such an awesome person. I hope you all enjoy this episode. I will put Ashley's contact info for social media in the show notes. And yeah, I hope you all enjoy. Please remember to like, rate, review, and subscribe to my channel, Donna's Lit Podcast on Instagram, or my other podcast, Ravish Podcast on Instagram. We are going to be coming out with some new episodes for that show as well. All right, y'all, enjoy. Hello, everyone. It's Donna, and I am joined today by Miss Ashley Hawthorne, a contemporary romance author who recently published her second book called Death Sentence this past Monday or was
Tuesday, I think.
Tuesday. Okay.
Tuesday.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you, and thank you
Uh,
so much for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to a fellow author. And I just wanted to touch a couple points in your bio that you sent me that I thought were very amazing. You have a house full of rescue pets.
I do.
I applaud
So
you.
many. I do. We have in the house permanently. We have three cats, three dogs, a ball python, a bunny, and two frogs. And we just finished. We still have one, but we had a litter of foster puppies that we had
Oh.
10. And we still have one here. She's hanging out with us because she needed to get her little hernia fixed before she
Oh.
could get adopted out. So right now we have an extra bonus puppy. So
Oh, well, God bless you because that's not easy. I have one dog and I'm struggling.
yeah, we are all very soft-hearted when it comes to animals, and if it's not me, then it's my husband. Like, we may just bring this one home for a little while.
That's awesome. They need it. And then I saw you love painting and you're also a baker.
I
That's
do.
that's a
Not
lot.
well. That's one of those things. It's a hobby for a reason because I have so much fun doing it, and then the results are questionable.
You could be on Nailed It. That's like one of the best
Yeah.
Netflix shows. We
Yeah.
always watch cooking shows and I'm like, as long as it tastes good, that's what
Right. Yeah.
matters.
And that's about where I'm at. I'm like, it's edible, but it's probably not pretty.
Yes, I made mini birthday cakes and my husband told me I'm not allowed to anymore. Like, just buy it.
Just as well as we can. Yeah.
He's like, no one knows what this is. Please just buy the
Oh no.
cake. All right. So getting into this, would you please tell our maybe many, maybe few listeners about your book that you just published? Because I really want to hear more about it. Sounds very interesting.
Yeah, Death Sentence is a contemporary romantic suspense, which means that we have a love story like you would have in a romance novel. We have two people who are trying their best to fall in love, and then we also have that sort of wrapped around a mystery. In this case, it is a murder mystery. So we have those two plots being sort of entangled. It's kind of like a crossover genre where you get the best of both worlds, and usually, they're kind of mixed up a little bit where you're not entirely sure whether your love interest is going to be the good guy or part of your mystery plot, maybe a little bit of both. So this one is a Neighbors to Lovers, where Eloise, who is my main character, has her perfect life and everything exactly the way she wants it, and then Ethan moves in next door and kind of turns everything topsy turvy for her in a way that she initially really does not appreciate. So he's our sunshine, kind of criminally inclined, tattooed bad boy next door, and
Oh.
she has no patience for him at all. And he's trying real hard to be charming and flirtatious because he likes to push her buttons and kind of watch her get mad at him for just existing.
That's one of my favorite things to read, like the
Yeah,
antagonizing each other.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
she has a lot of my characteristics with that kind of perfectionism and stuff, and then my
Yeah.
husband is the laid back kind of one that's always just like, I bet I could make her mad.
Don't they always?
He's like, I know what I could do just to make her just a little bit mad.
That's awesome. I told you a little bit earlier before we started recording, I love true crime. Like
Yes.
I have nightmares sometimes after watching some documentaries.
Yeah,
But
my husband had to make it a rule in my house that I'm not allowed to leave the TV on true crime while he's sleeping because he's woken up a few times. I'm like, what in the world is wrong
oh
with you?
yeah.
I'm
After
so
I watched the
sorry.
Night Stalker documentary on Netflix, I had
Yeah,
nightmares for weeks and I've never had that, but it was very scary. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely checking out your book and I'm going to give
thank
you
you.
like so much feedback because it sounds exactly like what I enjoy in real life.
Thank you.
All right. So I reached out to all authors on Instagram threads, requesting anyone who is interested to join me on my podcast to give me advice as an up and coming aspiring author, a romance author specifically. And Miss Hawthorne, you responded very quickly and enthusiastically. And I appreciate it so much. I wanted everyone to know why this is happening. It's kind of a learning experience for me from someone with way more experience. So Ashley, when did you start writing? And was there any instance that made you want to write specifically romance?
Well, I like to tell everybody I kind of grew up reading romance because that's what my mom read, and as soon as I was old enough to start stealing books off of her bookshelf, that was my preferred genre because that was just what was there.
Yep.
And I always wanted to be a writer, but I was one of those that I really thought like I just didn't have what it took to make a story. I was good at academic writing and essays and stuff in school, but I had no idea how to take a concept and make something as long as a book out of it.
hmm
And when we all went into started the lockdowns in 2020, I found some really cool fandom spaces where people were writing fan fiction and stuff, and I used that and that community as a way to sharpen my skills and learn how to make a story that was long enough to fill, and hit all the right plot points and stuff. And they held my hand through all of those things and taught me everything that I needed to know. And we went from 2020, and my first book came out last year, and then I've got a book coming out that just came out last week, earlier this week,
hmm
and then I've got 2024 and 2025 as well. So it
That's
went
so
pretty quickly
awesome.
for me once somebody taught me how to do it. It actually went pretty fast.
Yeah, what I found, so I actually started writing my book over 10 years ago. And what I found was I didn't realize there is a method. It's not just go write your heart out and ta-da. Like there's a method to the madness. There's a way to do it correctly. And that's been a big learning curve for me because I expected to just be able to spout it out and it would be wrapped in a pretty bow, and it has not
Doesn't
happened
work that
that
way.
way.
When I first started writing, I was trying to do, I think, the same thing where like I'll just sit down and I'll start writing and the story will come to me. And I'm able to get words on a page that way, but it's a very slow and painstaking process for me to try to do it that way. I'm definitely a plotter at heart. My stories work so much better for me if I sit down and make an outline. I'm like, this is going to be Act One, this is Act Two. That way, I get my turning points in the right places and stuff, and then I just kind of literally go in and fill in my bullet points until
Oh,
I've made
that's
a chapter.
awesome. Right? That's
I know
awesome.
there are writers that hate that because they feel like it takes away the mystery or it makes it it's too boring and formulaic for them. But I can't write without an outline for me.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely where I need to get because I feel like I'm getting to parts in my book, like in parts of the story that aren't meshing, or I think it should be going that direction. It's like this is not relatable, or it's not cohesive with the rest of the book. So I have like I have a fast forward of a year written, and then I went back and changed it to where it doesn't fast forward. So I'm like, ah.
Yeah, I always struggle, and even with my outline and stuff, there's places where it deviates, where it's like, oh, I didn't know that was going to do that, but now the characters have done something I didn't expect. You're always going to get caught up in that, having to go back and do edits, even once you get to the end.
Yep.
It's a lot for the creative process, however you end up doing it.
Yeah,
I feel like
definitely.
I edit less as a plotter, but I definitely still have to go back all the time and make notes about, oh, that was gonna have to change that. That's terrible.
Right. Like, what was I
What was I
thinking?
doing
I
there?
have many of those. All right. So, what is the best piece of advice you have to give other aspiring writers or even experienced writers for their journey?
The biggest thing for me is finding that community so that you have those writer friends who can help you figure stuff out. Like you get stuck on a plot point, or you're trying to, what's been working for you for your process is no longer working. Because I know that happens to me. It's like something will change with the kids' schedule, or I'm more stressed than I was, and whatever process was getting words on the page before is suddenly no longer working for me, and I have to go back and be like, what else can I try? This is no longer
Yeah.
working for me. And having that group of people there to help you kind of brainstorm your way out when you've written yourself into a corner, or somebody that knows what it feels like to get those rejections, or to how panicked you can get when you feel stuck, like I'm never going to finish this book. And my husband's like, yeah, no, you'll get there. And another writer will be like, yeah, I know how that feels.
Yeah, I know.
Like I have been there, and it
Right.
feels different to somebody that has been in the place where you have been and knows how emotional that can be. Because even my
Mhm.
mom sometimes she's like, you're overreacting, and my writer friends are like, no, you're not. It's fine. So
No,
that's, to me, that's the
definitely.
big thing.
Yeah, I think that might be what I'm lacking is the community you're speaking about because I don't know anyone else in person who is trying to write a book or who has ever written one. So everyone
Yeah.
wants to be like supportive and not critique me, but it's not helpful either.
Right. You need somebody to be like, well, that doesn't seem like it's working for you. No,
Yeah.
I do find places like Threads or Instagram, or even Twitter, or what used to be Twitter, is a good place to start making those friends and stuff, and then find yourself a group chat or a Discord server or something with other romance writers. Or I have
Yeah.
one that's specifically for people that write like darker themes of romance, so your romantic suspense or dark romance, or um, horror romance, which is what I've got a horror romance work in progress right now. So you just kind of get however you can get yourself into a group of like-minded people who are doing the same thing, so you can have those conversations. It
Yeah,
helps a
that's
lot.
awesome. Yeah, my husband tells everyone that I read smut.
Yeah.
That's how he tries to make me friends. I'm like, please stop telling people this.
Yeah, my husband has sold my books to people that he works with because he's been like, oh yeah, my wife writes smut. You should read this. I'm like, can you not? I mean, I appreciate the effort that you're trying to sell books for me,
Right.
but you have to look at these people every day at work. So
Exactly. I'm afraid to write like passion scenes because I'm like, my parents, I don't want them to know these thoughts are in my head.
yeah, my almost 97-year-old great grandma called to tell me that she had read my book, and I was like, the whole thing, and she's like, I skipped some of it, and I was like, oh thank goodness. Like I'm so glad you didn't read the whole thing.
That's awesome. Oh, that's so awesome. That's funny. Yeah, definitely. I'm like, should I publish under a different name because I don't want people to know it's me?
See, I did. My Hawthorne is a pen name for me because I was trying to
Oh,
keep it so that I could keep it a little bit quiet. But between my husband and my mother, I might as well not have bothered because they told everyone I've ever met in
you're
my
out
life.
there,
Yeah,
right?
like thanks, guys.
That's awesome though. At least you have that support system. That's
Yeah,
good.
they
It's
they
like,
love me a little much, but it's nice to be loved.
right? That is good. That's good. So I know we talked, you are a contemporary. Do you stick to that or like your reading preference? Do you like historical or futuristic or anything?
I read a little bit of everything. I just kind of go through moods where it's like, oh, I'm feeling historical right now, and then that's all I read. But then I'll go through another couple months that I only read contemporary. My list of books to read is insanely long, which is good because I have
Hmm.
moods where it's like I'll pick up a book that I really wanted to read and be like, no, that's not it right now. I can't do that. So I got
Right.
to pick something else. But I do. I read a little bit of everything. I enjoy just books in general. I
Right.
can't say
That
I read
escape.
everything, but I read a lot of different things. I think I learn a little bit from each of them, so
Yeah, that's what
it's
I was
fun.
gonna say. It helps you be more well-rounded since you can pull maybe from different genres or subgenres. That's awesome. I mean, I am anti sci-fi. I cannot in fantasy.
Yeah, I do better with fantasy than I do with sci-fi, but even that, some of it I found is pretty good. I tend to lean more towards the fantasy, but I have definitely found some sci-fi where I'm like, yeah, that was a really good story. So
I
it
know.
depends on the story for me, I think.
Yeah, and the talent of the author if they're because I'm in I started reading or listening to the audiobook It Begins With Us by Colleen Hoover and or It Starts With Us and it's actually really good and I'm not typically a contemporary fan. So I'm like, wow, she must be pretty talented.
The accounts are showing my attention. Yeah.
Right. And it's first person perspective. So that's different because I stick with Regency mostly and
Mhm.
it's all third person. So is your book first
No. I
person?
have I have a couple of work in progress that I've kind of set aside for different reasons where I've tried writing in first person. And sometimes it fits the vibe of the book, but generally I tend to write in third just because that was what I grew up
Yeah,
reading. It was all third person. Like the first time I tried to read in first person, I was like, I don't understand.
it
Like I
is
don't know what's happening.
different.
It's so different. Yeah. So I was
It
like, I don't know if
is.
I don't know. I've never finished one, so I don't even know if I could do that and do it well. Because you
Right.
really have to wrap that sort of like immediacy. It's
Yeah,
so intimate being in that first person that I feel like it's harder
exactly.
to, or at least it's harder for me
And you have to
to
become
engage with.
that person.
Yeah, that's it, right? You really have to be able to think so intimately about the way another person would think, and I'm like, I don't know if I have the skill to pull that off for a whole book.
No, definitely. I was listening to a podcast by some other authors, and they were saying, like, third person's out, first person is the only way you're getting books sold right now. And I'm like, I don't even read first person books. What are they talking about?
I don't know. I mean, it's definitely. I do think it's more popular now than it used to be. But I know I've read books that have come out recently that are still in third person. So I don't think it's impossible to get it done in third
Yeah.
person. But it is. I think first person is experiencing a little bit more of a moment than it
Yeah,
has in the
definitely.
past, where it's more common.
And it's kind of what I've noticed, it's kind of hard to like know what the timeline is because sometimes it's like a flashback scene. I'm like, wait, that's happening
Right.
right now. And I have to like wait a second, this isn't happening in the present.
Right.
Yeah. Um, okay, so I have more questions, of course.
Yeah. Go for it.
Um, how was your first book last year published? You said it's a small publishing company?
Yeah, yeah, I publish with a small press, so I don't have to do everything myself because I do have that support from them. So they paid for things like my cover and my editing.
Oh,
Um, they pay for like the ads on places like Amazon and stuff like that, and then they take their cut before I get my royalty. So I don't get all of it like I would if I was self-published. But
yeah.
I didn't have to have an agent to submit to them. And my first
Oh,
book was a little weird. It was kind of didn't really fit comfortably inside of a one genre as my second book did. So I knew that it was going to be hard to find an agent for that. And I just don't have the talent to do self-publishing because there's so much that goes into that with formatting and all. I was like, I can't. The one, I can't afford the upfront cost to pay for all of it, and
Yeah.
two, I don't have the ability to compensate for that by like making my own cover.
Right.
So for me, that small press was kind of like an in between kind of thing where I was able to submit to them directly, and I do have more say, I think, over my cover and stuff than I would if I went with a bigger, because, they just send me a bunch of different options that, and they're like, hey, which one of these do you like?
Oh,
We're
that's
gonna, so I
cool.
get to have some kind of say in like, what happens. So for me, it's kind of like a kind of a neat in between place where I get more creative control, but I don't have to do everything all on my own. And I may at some point try self-publishing, now that gotten more comfortable with the other parts of being an author like this, doing interviews or the social
Yeah.
media marketing and stuff. But I just didn't feel comfortable trying to take it all on my own at the beginning, and that
Hmm.
just kind of really seemed like a more comfortable way for me to kind of ease my way into that.
Definitely. It is overwhelming. Like I've
So
been doing
much.
research and I'm like this if you want like a talented editor and yes, the graphic artist for the book cover, you're spending like 6,000 a low ball for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and it's definitely worth it if you have the money to be able to pay for that. But with me, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I've homeschooled my kids for their the entire time that
Wow.
they've been doing school, and my oldest is a senior this year. So I've we live on a one income, so I just
Yeah.
don't have an extra $6,000 to put into anything for myself at all.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of one of those. People like to argue about which one is better, doing the self pub or the small press, or it depends on the individual person and what you have to offer.
Mhm.
What you need from the experience and what you can do for yourself. I don't think there is like a one size fits all best answer to that question.
Yeah, no, I didn't even sound ignorant right now, but I really didn't even know about small press until you were talking about it. That I didn't know that
That's
was an option. That's really interesting
I
because it
didn't see,
takes
and
a big
that's
weight off of you.
Yeah, it does. And I didn't know that was a thing either until I got, onto those writer spaces and saw people talking about it. And I was like, oh, maybe, because I was already looking for an agent at that point. So I was like, oh,
Oh,
maybe if I don't get a lot of it, an option to get an agent with this book, maybe I will try looking at small presses. And that was what ended up happening. And they've been really, really good to me. I don't
yeah.
have as much support as I would get for, my book is not going to be on a billboard in Times Square. They just don't have the marketing budget for that.
Yeah.
But it's still better than me doing it all on my own because they do have the expertise and the stuff for
Yeah.
things that I still don't understand.
That's awesome. I definitely am keeping that golden nugget right there. Did you go like reach out to them and submit your book and they had to accept it, or was it like you could pay them for that service?
No, when you pay them, that's what most people call like a vanity press, right? You're paying to have it published. I didn't pay my publisher anything. I submitted it to them and during when they were open for queries, and I just sent off just basically the same query package that I had sent to an agent. She looked at my letter and my first, I think it was 3 chapters, and she was like, "Hey, this seems like something we might be interested in. Can you
Wow.
send me the whole book?" She read it and then she reached back out to me. She was like, hey, if you're interested, we would like to publish this. I signed the contract with them, and then we did revisions and the cover and all that stuff. And it took, I think, about a year
Oh, wow.
to go from signing all the way through until the book actually came out. So where they helped me with developmental edits and line edits, and they did all of the formatting stuff for the paperback and the ebook, paid for all the ads and stuff, and then so it was a lot less work on my part during that year because I was
Yeah.
only doing like revisions and stuff. I wasn't trying to do formatting and cover design and all those kinds of things.
Did
But
did you have it edited before you submitted to the small publisher, like
I
professionally?
No, I did not have it professionally edited because again, I am poor. But if you can afford
You're
it,
on a budget. You're on a
yeah, like I'm on
budget.
a budget. If you can afford to do it, I think it definitely helps. But I don't think it's like a requirement.
Yeah.
I did have. I think you should have somebody look at it. But I had a lot of author friends who were
Oh,
willing to beta it for me, to read it and help me with that stuff and help me clean everything up. So it had I want to say 3 or 4 other people that had looked at it besides me, so it wasn't just me. And that's
oh, that's
another thing that
awesome.
I'm happy to do for other authors is, hey, I have this book done. Can you read this and look at it and tell me, feedback and stuff. So again, that writer community coming in handy because it wasn't just me. I'm a horrible editor. I read faster than my brain registers stuff, so I leave words out of almost every sentence, and I don't catch it. And they're like, "Hey, that doesn't make sense." I'm like, "Oh yeah, there should have been another word there." So
You're like, what word was it? Dang
where was it?
it.
Oh my god! Yeah, sometimes I go back to read. I'm like, I don't even remember what that was.
What am I saying?
What was I saying?
That's awesome. I'm seriously like stunned and excited because that sounds like such a great option because that's a lot of money regardless. I don't have
Yeah,
an extra $6,000.
yeah,
We were
definitely
going to
not gonna
take
have
a
that.
loan out or use a credit card and that would have sucked.
Yeah, no. Especially if you're planning to, if you're planning to try to get an agent first, you work on that book, find a beta reader, a critique partner. You can send it to me, I'll read it.
Okay.
To just kind of work through that kind of stuff and help you catch things like your typos or grammatical errors or whatever, help you strengthen it up as much as possible.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying it's as good as a professional editor, but it's better than doing it, by yourself and not having any of
Yeah.
that support. And I'm
Yeah.
happy to do that. I can't say that I will be able to do it extremely quickly because my brain lately has been with the foster puppies and everything, but I would be
Yeah.
happy to do that for you. It might take
Awesome.
me a few weeks or a month, but I'll get it to you.
No, that's awesome. I appreciate it genuinely because it's scary. I feel like it's one of my children. I'm like, oh.
Yes, it's, I tell people that I'm like, this is my baby.
Yes, and it's like, oh, like biting your
Yeah,
fingernails.
yes.
So, one of the things I've been struggling with is developing that inner strife that I feel like most all books have with the main
Right.
characters, like their backstory, and then how that trauma or issues from when they were, younger affect them in how they act or react in the situations of the present. And that's been hard for me to remember. And I keep like making my characters perfect. Like, oh, I'm healed. I don't
Yeah, I need
I
help
don't
all the time.
react. I'm here. And that's
Right.
boring.
Um, that I think that's a good thing that beta readers are good for is they kind of help you try to keep those character things consistent, where your character will react in a way that they're like, hey, I don't know if that's quite right, but they'll help you catch those things and keep it consistent. But I think that I would call that like when I do my editing or when I'm thinking about like my character development and my character arc is that they call it like the character wound. It's that incorrect belief
Yeah.
that they have about themselves or about the world. And I think once you have that kind of like more defined, when you say, okay, this character's mom was not really attentive, so they don't think that they're lovable, you can
Yeah.
read through your draft specifically looking for, does she react in the scene like she doesn't think that she's lovable? You know? So once you've labeled it and you've kind of put that stamp on it and said, this is what she believes about herself that's not true, and this is what she needs to overcome in order to be able to accept that happy ending, it makes it easier in your revisions to go through and kind of see, does she believe that in the beginning and does it change as it gets towards the end?
Okay.
So for me, that is I always go into it with that, but like you said, sometimes like you get into the scene and you forget that they're supposed to be having that. So for me, that's the thing that I always have to go back through and intentionally look for in revisions, where
Yeah.
I see, is she making steady progress? And I do that for both, at least both of the main characters, and then any interesting side character that's also got things they're trying to work out. But
Yeah. Have you, when you were getting your feedback for your revisions, did they catch any of that or did they have comments about, like, I don't think this is how the characters would react based off
yeah,
how
yeah,
they've been?
I definitely do get feedback like that where it's like, I think I've done enough work to have them be like, oh, well, this is where I'm at. emotionally, and my beta will come back and be like, no, that's not. Like, you're saying this is where the character is, but I haven't seen you put the effort into actually making them believe that. You need to look at that in
Yeah.
revision. So I have to go back and be like, okay, I didn't do enough work.
Oh, wow. I mean, it's
So
a process. I
it
don't
is.
think anyone can appreciate how difficult it is to create humans.
Yes, exactly. I'm creating a person from scratch,
That's
and a
an
messed up one
adult.
at that. Yeah. A messed up adult person who has all
Right.
these flaws, and then I have to make the flaws and also figure out how to at least improve the flaws. We're
Yes,
not aiming for a
yes.
perfect person, but we want to see them having made progress. I'm like, how do I fix somebody that doesn't think they're lovable? And then I have to figure that out.
Exactly. And that you just honestly gave me an idea I need to research. Like mommy issues. What kind of
Yeah, like
characteristics
what
do
kind of
people with
things?
mommy issues have?
Yeah, and that tends to be a thing for me, is my characters always have difficult family relationships. So that's almost always something that is rooted in there. Different reasons
Yeah,
for each character, but to me that's always a good source of whatever their flaw is going to be, because it just feels like such a natural thing. Even good families still leave you with things you got to work out as an adult.
definitely. Yeah, and it's relatable because I don't know a single person whose upbringing was sunshine
Perfect.
and
Yeah.
rainbows. We all are mad at our parents about something.
Something.
Um, so like I said, I'm really struggling with making my characters just perfect. Do you feel like um did you have to research, like I was just mentioning, a lot to understand who you were creating or making that person into?
um, I not so much. I tend to break off little pieces of me and stick them into characters. I didn't have like a super terrible childhood, but there was enough in there that I could be like, yeah, what would it be like if your mom was overly critical, or those kinds of things. If they had anxiety, or if the character has depression, or if you felt like your older brother got more attention than you, or just whatever those little things were. And then I take that and I'm like, what if I took that little piece of me, that small thing that I have an issue with, and made it 10 times worse? If I just
Right.
made that the thing that characterized my entire childhood, what would that look like? So I just make them have bigger feelings about it.
That
If
makes
that makes any
sense.
kind of sense. It's
Yeah.
just an exaggeration of
Yeah.
personal experience.
Yeah, because I'll be reading, I'm like, why is this such a big deal to this person? Like, get
Yeah.
over it. But that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
That's funny. And then so you said you're a plotter. So and when you're plotting and you get to that point where you're like, I don't know what to do next, you typically just reach out to your compadres in the writing
Yeah,
community and they
I do.
just give you that.
I have some people that I have, that I've been friends with since I started writing, that typically know like the kinds of stories that I write and those kinds of things. So I go to them usually first, where I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, this is where I'm at. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And they'll throw some ideas at me and they'll be like, what if you did this? And I'm like, no, not that. That's terrible. But at least I know that's not correct. And
Yeah.
somewhere in there, I always end up finding a thing. I'm like, oh, well, I couldn't do that. But what if I did this instead?
Yeah, that
And
makes sense.
that always helps. And sometimes they don't have the answers. And if I'm really, really stuck on something, and this is like the last resort thing where I just can't figure out a way to move forward, it's usually because I messed up something just before I got to that point. The character
Yeah.
made a decision that is trying to take the story in a direction that I don't like,
Yeah.
and I have to go back a couple of decisions and try to do something else instead. So
Yeah.
if even my brainstorming partners can't help me, then I need to go back to the beginning of that chapter or the end of the last chapter and be like, what other choices could that character have made that take me in a different direction? And then that almost always gets me unstuck.
That makes a lot of sense. That's what I feel like I need to go backspace a little bit because,
And that's always a hard decision because you feel
yeah.
like you've gotten to this point and you don't want to feel like you've wasted that effort, but
Hmm.
sometimes you have to figure out what not to do. before you can
Yeah.
figure out what to do instead.
Yeah, I was writing this one chapter and I just feel like it wasn't who the character is. After I finished, I'm like, this doesn't even make sense to me in the sense of the story and the plot and everything. I'm like, and I don't, that's why I'm stuck because I don't feel like it's true to who the characters are and the time period because my book is set like late 1800s in America. And I just don't feel like the reaction my female lead is giving is
Quite
real.
right.
It
Yeah.
feels, yeah, very
And
forced.
if you're hesitant about, if you like the writing in that section, but you just don't feel like it's right for that story, do that thing that everybody tells you to do where you start another document and you put all your little chunks in there,
Oh,
because
that's
you
a
can
good
always
idea. No one
repurpose
told
that,
me that. No
That
one
way you're
told
not
me that.
wasting it. Yeah, make yourself a graveyard document where you just take that good writing that doesn't quite fit, cut it out of the other one, paste it over there, and then you may find the perfect story for that later, or it may become the beginning of a totally different story.
Wow,
So then
that's a good
it's not
idea.
wasted. If you can figure out a way to repurpose it, or at least you're not you feel emotionally attached to it, at least you know that it's there, so you might be able to use it someday. And that makes it
Yeah,
easier to take out stuff that doesn't quite fit without feeling like you just wasted, brilliant line level work.
because I'm a mom also, and uh every moment I get to write in my book is golden. Like I don't get
Right.
many. So it's like I just an hour for all it is. So it's like, yeah, that's a great idea. I appreciate that. I'm gonna do that.
Yes.
Because these kids are, they think I am their servant. So
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I didn't
yeah.
start writing until my kids were a little bit older, so it was a little bit easier for me, but I write most of my books between like midnight and 3 a.m., when
Wow. Oh,
when
you
the
said
kids
you
are
are a night
asleep.
owl.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wish
yeah.
I was.
Yeah, I know that. Then there's also that 5 a.m. Writers Club on Twitter. So it's like you're either
Oh,
really early or really late, because there's no way I could write when my kids are running around in the afternoons. It takes too much of my attention, even with them being teenagers. They see me with an
yeah.
open laptop and they're like,
Right? Like
it's
you're
time
not
to
doing
rest,
anything
mom.
over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I started writing when I was younger, and then my husband knew I'd been trying, like nursing this book, like nursing a drink, nursing this book along, barely writing here and there. And then after I had my two babies, like back to back, I was suffering with postpartum, and I'm like, I don't have anything that's me. I feel so absorbed in these kids, and I kind of felt like I lost myself, and he encouraged me like pick up your book and finish it. Like quit making excuses. Like that's you. That's what you have because you enjoy it. And that's why I started writing again because he forced me to.
That's good though. Yes, that's a good husband right there. He's like, yes,
Yeah.
do something for you, and
Yeah.
that's good. You should. Yeah. As my kids are a little bit older now, but I definitely remember being back when they were just super small and feeling like that's all that I was anymore, was just mom, and there was nothing left for me. And I do wish I had kept. It would have helped me a lot emotionally if I had kept something for myself back then, instead of
Yeah.
waiting until they were almost grown.
At least you're doing it now though. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like consuming, I guess, is a good
Yeah.
word. That's what they do. They consume me.
You do.
So, one thing that I did, this is my last comment. One thing that I did as a failure, no, I'm just kidding. I I picked my book up again in like September-ish, and I gave myself a suspense of 31 December 2023 to finish it. And I had never researched how do you write historical romance? Did
Right.
not realize it was so much longer than contemporary, and there's hit points and certain things you have to like thresholds you have to meet for it even to be considered a novel. And me doing that was to hold myself accountable, but there was no way I was meeting that goal. Do you
Right.
give yourself those kind of suspenses or like goals, I guess, for your books?
I do, because I'm one of those people, if I don't have the deadline, then I just will not work on it at all. Like, I will spend 3 months watching, K dramas and forget that the book exists. I have to have some kind of outside pressure, or even if it's just me being like, hey, there's a date on the calendar that says you're supposed to do this. But that is really just to provide me with motivation to actually be working on it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not going to beat myself up if I don't hit that, because, as a mom, there's always stuff that's changing and schedules that are changing and kids that need my attention and stuff. I was like, well, I was supposed to write today, but I didn't because something more important came up. So if I don't hit
Yeah.
that deadline, that to me, I have to have one, but it has to be flexible. I have to give
Yeah.
myself some kind of grace to say, look, I gave it my best shot, and now we moved the deadline because,
Right.
and my pub once you get to where the publisher gives you a deadline, it's a little bit different. But I most of the time they tend to be pretty good about, if somebody has an illness or something,
Yeah. Because
trying to work with you on stuff like that. Because I do have one, I am under deadline for having a book turned in by September that I haven't started yet. So
I
I'm
won't
like,
tell.
I've got to finish this first one first and then do that one.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I have a 1-year-old who is she's not sickly, but she is always sick.
yeah,
It's like last
right.
week was pink eye, double ear infection. She just got the hospital for a like chest virus. Like, Lord have mercy, please. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm glad I'm not the only one who's like not able to always meet that. But with your first book, were you um did you have that suspense for yourself, or were you more like, I'm just gonna write this book first and then let it go?
I didn't at the beginning, and then as I kind of started getting towards the end, I had to give myself a deadline because I didn't realize how emotional it was going to be finishing that first book. Because like you said, this is kind of like your baby. These are characters that you have made, and you get attached to them. And the idea of
Yeah.
being done with it, even though you're going to have to go back and do edits and stuff, was like I started to get really emotional, and I was like, I don't know if I want to finish it because then it's done. So I had
Yeah.
to give myself a deadline to be like, look, you have to get this finished because you will sit on it forever just because you don't want to deal with all of the feelings. And I did. When I finished it, I cried, and then I cried again when I started to query it, and I cried again. Every step of the process is just like, so it's been a little bit better on the second one, but then that first book, it was like every time I hit a milestone or something, it was like it's now time to cry.
Right? It's so hard.
Yeah,
And it's such a big investment of yourself too.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so exciting. Well, Ashley, thank you so much. You have been very kind and knowledgeable, and I feel very inexperienced
See,
and
but I was
green.
exactly the same way when I started. When I was in the middle of writing my first book, I had about exactly the same amount of knowledge as you. So in 2 books, you will know all the things that I know, and you'll be helping somebody else who's like, "What do I do? Help me!"
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. It means so much to me. I don't know if you can tell, my cheeks hurt because I've been smiling so much
Nice.
because I'm so happy. Um, but thank you. I hope you have a great St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you. And I will be sending you my book for some
Yes.
beta testing.
Yes, absolutely. I know I always say that nobody ever does. You can actually take me up on it. I promise it's
No, I
okay.
will. I
Okay.
will, because I would rather someone who isn't super close to me read it, because then,
Right.
like, maybe I won't be like as take it as personal if you're like, oh.
Right. And it's hard to learn how to be a beta and do the criticism without being too hard about it. I have a lot of practice at balancing critique and encouragement. So
Oh, that's
you gotta
good.
find a good person to do it. So I can tell you and still be nice to you and still hopefully make it so that you're like, yeah, I'm gonna. You want to motivate.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Not tear down and just be like,
yes,
you're
yeah,
terrible. Please
right.
don't write anymore.
I'm not gonna do that. I promise I will be so nice to you.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.